Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Cameron Herold, welcome to the conversation today.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from South Africa. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. A big time difference for us. Today, we're going to be talking about evolving your team so that it doesn't need a tiebreaker. I'm super excited to unpack this idea with you, really intrigued by it. We're going to have such a fun conversation. As we get started, I wanted to share Cameron's bio with everybody. Cameron Herold has decades of experience in operations, scalability, company culture, and so much more. Cameron is founder of the COO Alliance and the Invest in Your Leaders course, is known as the CEO Whisperer for helping top businesses like Sprint Telecom and Middle Eastern Monarchy double their profits and revenues within 3 years. Starting his entrepreneurial journey early, Cameron built two $100 million companies by the age of 35 and later drove 1-800-GOT-JUNK growth from 2 million to 106 million in revenue and from 14 to 3,100 employees in just 6 years. He's a captivating speaker, has spoken in 26 countries across 7 continents, including Antarctica. I'd love to hear more about that, and is a top-rated lecturer. There's so much more. I could talk all day about all the cool things that you've done. I'm going to pause there, though. Anything you would like to highlight about your background before we dive on in?
I'm a dad and a loving husband. That's probably all the stuff I've add to the bio that matters.
Most important things, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Very good. So first off, this isn't what we're talking about really, but tell me about speaking on Antarctica.
Yeah, and let me just add something really quickly. It's funny. I was talking to my 2 kids about this about 7 or 8 years ago. I said, if your friends ask you, what does your dad do? I don't want you to be saying things like, I run the COO Alliance, or he's an author, a speaker. None of that stuff matters. I want you to say that I'm a traveler, that I'm a global traveler, that I cross off bucket lists, that I go to festivals, that I'm, love hiking and I love skiing and I love golfing and cooking. I want you to tell them about my hobbies and my passions, not what I do to make money. So that's become a very big focus for me. And I think for many leaders, we've lost sight of what really matters, because at the end of the day, that is what really matters, right? This is just what we do to make money. The speaking in in Antarctica, I have been paid to speak now in 29 countries, which is crazy. And years ago, I had thought I was going to pull together a trip of CEOs to actually go to Antarctica as a way to cross off, that I've been spoken in 7 continents. And I was talking to a CEO about it. He goes, I'm actually running a trip for a bunch of CEOs next year. Why don't you come and I'll pay you to be a speaker and you can come with us? And I was like, nice. That would be amazing. So we went. It was 3 years ago now, and we had the first silent disco in history on Antarctica. We had a whole bunch of CEOs dressed up in penguin onesies, and we did a dance party on the boat. And I actually did a speaking event to a group of CEOs when I was down there about growing your people and growing your companies. And yeah, so I guess I'm one of the rare people who have been paid to speak on all continents. Not that it matters.
Well, that is super cool. And I totally agree. Like, let's focus on what matters most. Husband, father, world traveler, lover of the planet, and all those sorts of things, right? That is what matters. And at the end of the day, all the other stuff is great. It's great to have impact and influence and help businesses, but it's those other things that make all the difference in the world. So,
and I think if we can show up in our companies with that actual belief and with that day-to-day kind of joie de vivre and with that day-to-day focus on having a great life and doing really fun things, we bring that energy and that enthusiasm and that mindset to our employees. Absolutely. And we can help our employees build better lives and better connections with their spouse, better connections with their kids, better connections with their parents, better connections with themselves. And there's lots of stuff that they can be doing in their own cities that doesn't even cost money. And I think at the end of the day, if more leaders would show up caring more about their employees' dreams and goals and insecurities and passions and fears than we do about the company, the employees will end up going through brick walls for us to build the company in the first place.
Right, right. Well, often we'll talk about just remembering the humanity in our people, right? And most leaders, I don't know many leaders who won't say, that people matter, like we need to invest in our people. Like everyone knows that's the socially acceptable thing to say at a minimum. And I think most people believe it to some extent at least. But, do we practice that? Do we actually run our business in such a way that demonstrates that that we really value our people, that we want to treat our people with dignity and respect, and when we approach them in the way that you just described, I think it demonstrates a certain level of just true value of them as an individual human being on this planet with an individual life, outside of the company, like that matters. That really just matters. And
Totally.
it's not common, in the business world. And
It's really not, it's sad. It's one of those things. I've heard a comment recently, and it's strong opinions loosely held. And I
mm,
think all leaders have a strong opinion that we should care about their people, and they don't do anything about it. They're
yeah,
focused on the number, they're focused on payroll, they're focused on tariffs, they're focused on, growth, they're focused on the metrics and the dashboards, and they forget that if they could flip the org chart upside down and obsess about caring about their people and building up their confidence, their competence, and their connections, those people would get more results for them. So I think it's very common when you find the very top 5% or top 2% of companies, the true best companies to work for, the true best managed companies, they absolutely show up that way. But the reality is average is horribly average, and then less than average is, like as an example, in the United States, I think there's something like 15 million companies in the United States. So that means 7.5 million companies are worse than average, and about another 6 million are only in the kind of top quartile. It's really to be in the top 1 or 2%, you've got to be a pretty special leader. But I think more people could be if they would recognize that A, it's more fun, and B, you get a lot more results when you show up that way. There's a fun saying I heard years ago, and it's that the CEO is the chief energizing officer, not the
I
chief
like that.
executive officer. And what's that energy that we can infuse as any real leader into the organization?
Yeah, I really, really like that. And it sometimes maybe it does seem counterintuitive, and I get it. Like you're trying to you just get caught up in the grind, the day to day. You're trying to make payroll. You're putting out fires, and you can quickly, regardless of best intention, you can lose sight of what really matters in investing in your people, and like you said, flip the pyramid upside down, obsess over your people, invest in them, pour in them, develop them. They will bust through brick walls for you, like you said, outrageous results for the company. All of that will happen, but it's hard. It can be
Yeah.
hard in the day-to-day grind, right? To like
Yep.
make sure that you're doing that and prioritize that when hard things happen, and you're having to respond to emergencies and whatever. So you
Yeah,
do have to have a commitment to it, and make sure that you do that consistently. And that's
you
that's
need
where
to
a
have
lot
a
of people, despite intention, kind of fall short, right?
Yeah, you need to have a commitment, and you need to have the skill set to do it. But when you go through learning, we have this cycle where you go through the unconscious incompetence, right? That we don't know we're not good at it. And then you go to conscious incompetence, which is like, oh, I know I'm not good at that. And then you go to the conscious competence, like, okay, I know that I'm now good at this, or and then when you really get around the corner, you get to the unconscious competence. Like you and I don't have to think about walking. We've been walking for so long that we just like our legs just kind of do the thing underneath us. That's unconscious competence. We don't have to think about running. When a leader can start to build that muscle and build the systems and build the habits to care about people, it just shows up in the day to day. It's just the way that they exist. It becomes an unconscious competence. And you notice it with certain people. There's certain people that say please and thank you, that open the doors for others, that look people in the eye when they talk to them. I mean, I was at lunch years ago with a CEO, and a waitress came up and asked us a question. And without even looking up to the waitress, he kind of waved her away and dismissed her and said, no, no, we're good. And he
Uh-huh.
never took his eyes off me. And I'm like, wow, what a disgusting human you are. I mean, you just dismiss another person. But that's probably the way that he behaves with his leadership team and with his employees and with his suppliers. So I think that unconscious competence has to we have to get to that stage as a leader. So you have to work at it. You've got to practice it. You've got to get coaching. You've got to do role plays. You've got to hold each other accountable. And you have to build it into part of your day-to-day of running a company.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The disgusting human comment, I think it made me think, do I do anything like that? Are there things that I just don't even realize that
I
I
think we,
do?
we all do as humans, right?
Right. Yeah.
Once in a while, but the key is, can we catch ourselves and go, oh crap,
Yeah, right.
can we kind of course correct? It's interesting. I saw my son was about 10 years old, and we were walking down the street in Vancouver years ago, and he walked past a homeless man, and he reached into his pocket and pulled out a toonie, which is a $2 coin in Canada, and he dropped it into the homeless person's cup. And I kind of looked at him and I said, Aiden, that's really nice of you. Like, I'm really proud of you for doing that. Like, here I am as your dad, and I was kind of walking by, and you reached into your pocket and handed him the $2. I'm really proud of you. And about one block later, he paused and he said, Dad, wait a second. And he went running back down the street, and he stopped and talked to the man for a minute. And then he came back and I said, what did you do? And I went back to him and I gave him the other $5 that I had in my wallet, because I knew that it meant more to him than it did for me. And I asked him to buy some food for himself. And I kind of
Wow.
was like, holy shit, like what a lesson that I just
Right.
learned from my 10-year-old son. So I think as leaders, we have to keep learning, right? And don't, oh, well, I sucked today, so I'm going to suck forever. It's like, no, I sucked today as a leader, so I'll get better tomorrow. Or I
Yeah.
forgot to somebody today, but I'll praise three people tomorrow to make up for it. I think those are the things that we can do as leaders to build that muscle. And again, when we care more about our people, they'll go through those brick walls to build our company. When we built 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we ranked as the #2 company in all of Canada to work for. That was 1.46 million companies. We ranked #2, but it's because we obsessed about our people. Like, we really, really cared about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what a touching story about your son. That's
Mm.
really beautiful. And
Thank you.
you're right. Like, we all have those little foibles, right? We all have those little things. Often we're not even aware of them. Hopefully we can become aware of them through self-reflection, or having a good, mentor, colleague, someone who can help, kind of point it out to us, who has trust, to share that with us. And just continuous learning, continual development, that we can get a
Yeah.
little bit better every day, right? That's what I hope. And I hope people will be gracious and have enough care and faith in me, and be patient with me, so that I can get a little bit better every day.
And it becomes a very cognizant decision to do that, right? I think I was speaking to a CEO about 4 or 5 years ago that I was coaching, and the CEO said, we don't really have a culture. And I said, well, then that's your culture. Like, it's beige. And it's not even Martha Stewart beige. It's kind of like boring, nondescript beige. You are horribly average. You're right in the middle of those 15 million companies. But if you want to decide to get better, what could you visualize your company looking at? Like, could you draw or commit to a vivid vision? And could you describe your company? Could you describe the way that you want to treat people, or the way that you grow people, the way that you foster healthy communication and debate, the way that you get people to interact on a day-to-day, the way that you get people to call each other out and call each other out and support the core values and praise each other to success? Can you craft that culture and then figure out how to make it come true? And he said, yeah, I guess we could. So that was the journey that we went on. His coaching was turning this very beige kind of meh company into a best place to work, right? And it becomes a very cognizant decision to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll always have a culture, so it's a question of whether it's going to be purposeful and proactive in developing what you want it to be, or if it's just going to kind of whatever, become
You know, we
something, and often not terribly positive.
Tell me the one teacher that you had, and I'm sure you had at least one, but tell me one teacher that you had growing up in school that was just that created a fun classroom. Do you remember the one you had? You must have had one, right?
Yeah, like elementary or like young kid or like college.
Any age.
Yeah,
Like
any.
I had a guy grade seven who was a Mr. Mayhew. Why I would remember his name from
Huh.
1977.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayhew, the French teacher, and he would stand with his back to the chalkboard. He would throw a piece of chalk over his shoulder, and if he landed it on the ledge, everybody in the class got a candy. We loved going to Mr. Mayhew's class.
That's awesome.
Who was
Yeah, I
yours?
remember I remember a teacher from seventh grade, a history teacher. Man, he was sure good at making history come alive. And he would start every class with like the dumb like dad joke. I didn't know them as dad jokes back then, but they were just
Right.
dumb jokes. But they're like
Yeah.
everyone loved them, thought they were hilarious, and he was super approachable. Like everyone just kind of felt like they were safe and at home in his class. Everyone, even
Right.
kids who maybe didn't feel particularly at home at school. And yeah, what
And with
those types of people are special. Like they really just create an environment where everyone feels welcome and safe and that they have an opportunity to contribute. Like that doesn't happen
well, they're
everywhere.
special. They're special, but they're not superhuman.
Right, yeah.
Telling a joke every day is not a superhuman trait. It's something that every single person listening or watching could choose to do starting tomorrow. Chat GPT could give you 300 jokes in a
Right.
minute, and you
Right.
could just do that every single day. You could just be the person that rolls in on a scooter through your office, or as Brian at 1-800 Got Junk used to do, he'd wear a purple pimp suit to work every once in a while. Like you could just choose to be silly and show up in a onesie. You could just remember that none of this stuff matters, and you could choose to be that grade seven teacher that we've all had. And I think when we show up that way, it changes the dynamics and the energy of a company in an unbelievable way.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're about halfway through our conversation, and we haven't really gotten to this tiebreaker idea, and I'm still really
Mm,
intrigued by it, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. Tell me what you mean by that. Evolving your team so that it doesn't need a tiebreaker. What does that mean
yeah.
to you?
Well, there was a book written about 15 years ago called Traction. It was written by a guy named
Hmm.
Gino Wick, who created the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. I'm good friends with Gino. We've been in a couple of CEO masterminds together. And in the book Traction, he says that the integrator, right, who is the second in command to the CEO, basically the COO of the company, that COO or that integrator should be the tiebreaker in all decisions. Meaning
Hmm.
that if you've got 5 or 6 people on your team and they can't come to a decision, the integrator, the COO, gets to break the tie and make the decision.
Hmm.
I say no. And the reason I say no is very similar to in our home growing up. Remember when we were kids and our mom or dad said, because it's my house, or it's
Hmm.
my, it's my house and you have to do it my, as kids we're like, F you. Like this is like at some point, that's not enough of a good reason because it's your home. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the tiebreaker role. What works better is to sit down and reason with them or have a healthy debate. Listen to your kid, get your kid to listen to you, have a really good discussion, talk about your family core values and your family budget and what's happened, like to come to a consensus. So, what I like to do is to have the second in command and all of the leaders get really good at creating an environment of good, healthy debate for the good of growing the company, for the good of hitting the company's goals, for the good of making the company's vivid vision come true, for the good of making the BHAG come true, for the good of driving the flywheel forward, but having good, healthy debate, not to be right, but to propel the company in the right way. And if you build a team that way that can argue and debate and pull out facts and pull out figures and listen to the others on the team so that at the end they can all go, you know what, we've all listened and we can as a group make a decision. That's better than having the tiebreaker who goes, yeah, because I said so, because I have this tie-breaking seat. And everybody walks away going, I didn't really feel heard. I don't really agree. Oh, we got to do what so and so said again. So that tiebreaker mentality inside of a company takes your company back down to the average very quickly. But growing leaders who can have good debate, who can, it's kind of like politics, sadly, in North America. So I've been to 58 countries in the last 4 years. My wife and I have been nomads for the last 4 years traveling. You go around the world and people will argue politics with each other and they stay really good friends. They argue for the sake of debate. But in North America, it's become like, oh, you're such a Republican, or you're such a Democrat. It's like, no, I just want a burger. This isn't a Republican. Like, I merely want to have pizza tonight. Like, how come cheering for the New York Yankees became a Republican or Democrat thing? Like, what? We've kind of lost our minds and we've lost the ability to have good debate. And if you bring that into your company as a skill where you listen to each other, but you debate for the good of those things, right? Core values, core purpose, BHAG, vivid vision, the goals. Then everybody walks out of the room going, that was amazing. I got to say my piece and I got to listen to everybody else's, and we all made a decision. It wasn't mine, but what the hell? It feels pretty good after we listened.
Yeah, I love that.
That's what I mean.
Generating the buy-in, like getting people on board. People are going to be way more committed to the decision. It can take a little bit more time and energy up front to go through that process, right? To have those conversations, to have the debate, go through the ideation. It can feel like you're saving time on the front end by kind of shortchanging those conversations and then just having someone authoritatively making the decision or having the tiebreaker or whatever. But on the back end, it usually takes a lot more time and effort,
Right.
because people aren't as on board. The change initiatives don't take hold, or whatever the case may be. You just don't have the same level of commitment, enthusiasm, energy behind whatever the decision is. You just don't.
Exactly. Now, there's a caveat to what I say. What I'm not suggesting, I'm not saying that we build a bit of a kumbaya group hug culture
Sure.
where everybody has to be involved in every decision. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that if you have a 500-person company, that all
Right.
500 people get involved in every single decision, but the people at the table. So it's up to the person who's booking the meeting to decide who you're bringing in, and then making sure that all of those people have a voice, that all of those people get heard. But if you're not willing to listen to somebody's facts and figures and feelings around something, then why did you invite them in the first place? So bring in only the people that need to be there to make the decision, create an environment that has all those people able to talk and discuss it. You can do it all very quickly, but at least you do it in an environment that feels healthy and it feels like you're doing it again for the good of the core values, the core purpose, the BHAG, the vivid vision, the goals, right? You're doing it to move the organization forward. And I learned something about that from a marriage coach I was working with years ago. She said, do you want to be right or do you want to be in the marriage?
Right.
Like, what are you arguing for here? To be right or to be in the marriage? I'm like, yeah, good point. Every once in a while, you've got to argue, again, not to be right, but you at least want to be heard, right? You at least want to be able to have a debate with your spouse or a discussion with your spouse, but in a good, healthy, constructive way, because you want to be in the marriage as well. And I think leaders need to remember that debate and conflict doesn't have to be bad, right? We don't have to whitewash everything so that we don't hurt somebody's feelings. No, that's not what this is about, right?
Yeah, and I think a good, mature, secure leader 100% welcomes this. They love the input. They love the feedback. They love the challenge. Like they want their thinking to be challenged. They want the smartest people in the room pushing on their ideas, because they know
Totally.
it drives better thinking. It drives better solutions, right? And it's the
Totally.
really insecure leader. It's the immature leader who gets threatened by that, who wants yes people around them, sycophants around them, who that's the environment where maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable, but it's going to produce worse outcomes. You're going to have
Yeah.
worse decisions. You're going to have
There's,
crummier products and services. You're going to have worse results for your people. And
there's
there, I
not
mean,
a
there's just
single there's not
go ahead.
a single A player out there that wants to work in an average environment where we don't get to have that level of discourse. At Google, they say, I don't care what you feel. I want to know the data. They want to know that you're bringing data to support your argument versus just a feeling, right? I want to know your thoughts, but I also want to know the data. And I think that's important to kind of bring that into that organization. But yeah, A players really want to have the good debate because they want to build something good. They want to be fighting for the good of the company, but they don't want to just argue for the sake of arguing, right? They don't want to just argue to be right. That's not what they're in this for. Imagine a hockey player, a football player, a baseball player, a basketball player arguing with their teammate just to see who's the better basketball player. No, they want to push to have the better result so they can win the championship, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, Cameron, this has just been a fantastic conversation. I know we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to be said, but I know at the time I've already kept you longer than I should have, but I need to let you go. Before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and then give us a final word for today.
Sounds great. Yeah, I've written 6 books. I run a podcast called the Second in Command Podcast. I have an online training called Invest in Your Leaders. I run a mastermind community called the COO Alliance. And then all of that information about me, my books, everything is on CameronHerold.com. And it's HEROLD. So CameronHerold.com. It's all up there. But at the end of the day, I guess my final word is to remember that none of this stuff actually matters. I got a tattoo about a year ago right here on my arm, and it's a Hindi. Well, it's actually written in Hindi, but it's a saying by Ram Dass that says walking each other home. And it's a reminder that we're just walking each other home, right? At the end of the day, we're all going to die. None of this stuff matters. Let's enjoy the journey. Let's enjoy spending time with our people, and let's just take care of each other along the path.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Cameron. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Cameron can do for you. Check out his website, all the wonderful books and resources, all the wonderful, thoughtful materials that he has for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.